What is your favorite moment from a video game? What is your favorite moment from a video game? What is your favorite moment from a video game? What is your favorite moment from a video game? What is your favorite moment from
What is your favorite moment from a video game?
What is your favorite moment? What is your favorite moment from a video game?
Well, there's a lot of little ones, but probably the one that captures this question the best would be from Pokemon Diamond, where I played through the whole game and got really attached to my Pokemon, and I beat all the gyms, and then I went through the task of going through Victory Road right before the Elite Four. And I went through this really big, long dungeon that was difficult to navigate, and I finally came out the other end. I scaled this waterfall, and I get to the top, and then this beautiful music starts playing.
Oh, yeah.
Like this serene, beautiful piece of music. And I just sit there for like 5 minutes. It has this feeling of triumph, like I can finally sit back and relax, but the knowledge that there is more to come, more incredibly difficult things to come, was really cool.
So is there a reason you think it resonated so much? Is it just like how beautiful the music was mostly?
It was that, I mean, that was a long time ago, and so maybe back then the Pokemon game was a lot more difficult for me than other games would be, or than it would be for me now. And I often played it with like a friend, which I did not have a large quantity of back then, so it was just, it was a combination of those things.
One that like is very distinct in my head is the prologue for Bayonetta 2, because Bayonetta is such a fucking insane, crazy, over-the-top game. I feel like the prologue just completely captures like the entirety of the series as a whole. Like so much shit happens, like buildings are exploding, you are on top of a jet, you're fighting angels, you're doing like splits and shit with your butt hanging out. It's just pure nonsense. If you watch it, like if you just watch like gameplay of it, it's just nutty. There's one point where you're on a train on a bridge that's falling apart, and at one point it crashes and you jump onto the debris of the bridge that's breaking, and you stop time and you talk to the other character, Jean, and you ask, did you get everything for the Christmas party? Because it's around Christmas time. And then she goes, oh, I forgot the caviar. They're like, okay, then we need to do this quickly. Like, just in the middle of like fighting these like crazy looking angels and beating the shit out of them, it's just, to me at least, I think that's really cool. I like over the top stupid shit. I feel like I'm not doing enough justice with how I'm explaining it, but it's just bonkers. It's just actually bonkers.
Think anything will ever top it?
If the third game ever comes out, maybe. I don't know whenever that's gonna happen. That shit's been teased for like 4 fucking years now. This shit is never coming out, ever.
I think one of my favorite moments from a video game was back in middle school when I got Fire Emblem Conquest Fates, and the scene was dancing on stage in her little disguise, and she was like all hidden and stuff. But like we all knew it was her, but nobody knew it was her because plot convenience. But like the music was so good, the animation was so pretty, and he made the main character's dad like die.
Oh my god.
He didn't actually die, but like it made him uncomfortable because of her fucking magic.
Spoilers.
Is there a reason it like resonates with you that much?
Oh, it's just pretty. I don't have that many video game moments because stuff like Omori and all that, I like The Walking Dead and all that, like I watched it. I didn't play it. Fire Emblem was like a main game for me back then. Like I played Revelations 27 plus times, and that's a lot, I think.
So my favorite moment would be a RuneScape moment from years ago, back when RuneScape was RuneScape 2. So for people who aren't familiar, RuneScape was launched as this 2D Java game for a long time, and it got this big update that is called RuneScape 2, which made the game still a Java-based game, but it was a fully 3D game. So RuneScape's still being updated, and it's still an MMO. But I keep track of it, but I don't really play it much anymore. But back in the day, RuneScape 2 was the shit. because that was the first MMO that I had ever had like exposure to. And when I was like 13 and started getting more freedom on the internet, I found this other MMO that you didn't have to download, which was a bonus back in the day for like someone on a shared family computer. Like it was a Java-based game, so you could just play it right in the browser, which was a huge benefit. But boot up this like huge MMO, huge player base back in the day, and I knew nothing about it. So I'm starting from scratch and like building up this character. And I don't know if you've played a lot of MMOs or RuneScape in particular, but the way the XP and the progression scales is that it starts fairly easy to acquire XP and levels to where they get you hooked, and then slowly they start cranking up the required amount exponentially. And that was a lot of fun for never being exposed to an MMO. So that's the background of the favorite gaming moment. The moment is when I killed my first green dragon and completed the quest Dragon Slayer. That was a big accomplishment in the game because a lot of items were locked behind quests that you had to complete. So back in the day, for a low-level RuneScape player who didn't know much, the height of the armor you could get was full Ruin plate. And that was like end game gear. You had to be level 40, which was the top level for gear in the free-to-play worlds. The top level's 99, but I was like excited to have a level 40 stat and level 40 armor. But you couldn't wear the chest piece until you finished this quest. So what you would have back in the day, and these I don't know, like that old school internet culture where everyone's like hanging around and chatting. So you would have all these noobs, all these low-level players running around in almost full ruin, but they would have these green adamant chest pieces because nobody did the quest because it was supposedly hard for low levels. So you're running around, and I'm one of those people, so I'm running around with this green chest piece when all these other, quotes, high-level people have the full ruin. So there's this hero's journey of me completing these quests and looking through the game, like the guides in the game, because I wasn't like familiar with looking up strategy guides or all the help that's baked into games nowadays. Like I was fresh to this game, and that's why working towards this quest and finally like going down into the lair of the beast, and it was such an easy boss. It was hilarious. Even at the time, like I was like, wow, that was like all these quests and all this build up to it, and I'm like, oh, that was it. Gosh, I have the chess piece. But being able to walk around in full ruin and kind of like show off to all the other new players after I was now this high level, that was a good moment for the young MMO gamer in me, being able to like show off to the noobs.
Yeah, that must have been very accomplishing.
Very, I know. Back in the day, it was like before. We're so saturated with MMOs and video games now, but the little accomplishments that you get, like the small highs from video games. I mean, that's why I feel like that's why people play them.
Probably my number one for favorite game moment is, I guess it would be both Mystery Dungeon DX and Blue Rescue Team of the first part of the main story, where you're running away and, you know, you're going back. Just because when I had first played the game, you know, I was little, I could hardly read, and I thought what was going to happen is, now that my character had gone away, I could never access my save file again. So I played through that game about 8 times, and when I would reach that point, I would reset my DS and restart my save file and just play all over again with different Pokemon again and again. And then one day I just forgot about it, went ahead and did it, and then it took me to the title screen, and that's when I realized for the first time ever that you can either restart at previous right before the boss room, or the story goes on with extra stuff.
Why did you think that was the case?
I was, 7 years old, hadn't really played video games too much. You know, when you're being told goodbye, you think that, it's the end. You're usually not going to see him again. With how it was portrayed, it made mini-me kind of sad. And so, and I didn't care about logic at 7.
Yeah.
Back then it was, I click buttons and it does things. So yeah.
My favorite moment is in 2017, I played Drakengard for the first time, and I remember I was having a very long and drawn out time of my life where everything was just like not the best. And so when I played this game, I really connected with it because all of the characters and such were just met with hardship after hardship. And there was one point of the game where the main character and his best friend were fighting each other because his best friend was corrupted and didn't really have control over his own mind. And so when they fought and his best friend beat him, he said something really interesting that kind of just like stuck with me. And that was, "Welcome to a world without song." When I heard that, I was taken aback because his best friend, what his main thing was that he was a bard. And over like my lifetime playing like video games and especially being drawn to fantasy games, the bard was always the thing that stuck out to me the most. And I always like really was attached to bards because the aesthetic and the personality that they always seemed to share, no matter what sort of media they were in, was always just like really interesting and like really fun to me. But hearing this character just relinquish everything that he had loved only because he was being brainwashed, I don't know, to me it felt like an ultimate sadness. And after I had experienced that and it stuck with me, I really just wanted to put everything that I had in my life into perspective, and I didn't really want to like waste anything anymore and wanted to like really appreciate everything that I had because I wouldn't ever want to like lose it. And I know in this sense it was like, it's of course it's a video game and something like that could probably like, that could never happen to me, but just the concept of being really driven toward this thing that like was your main staple, seeing that getting like completely erased to me was really memorable, and I would never forget that.
I think my favorite moment in a video game would be the ending of Undertale Pacifist Route, when you save all your friends' souls from Flowey, and then when you reach out for Asriel to be his friend and save the whole world from destruction. That was a really good moment that like stuck in my mind for a while. And then also when you defeat Asriel, you could talk to all the monsters you've met before, and you get to leave the underground and live together on the surface. That was a happy ending that I loved.
Is there a reason you think those resonated with you so much?
I think it's because you just like make friendships with the monsters who are just really friendly. I don't know. Yeah, it's just like you don't have to kill them. You can be friends with them instead. And I really like that option of just being friends.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's really epic that you just like save them from from the whole world, like dying from the world's destruction. That's really cool. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Ooh boy. Well, another thing I was able to share with my sister and so many friends I treasure is the Ace Attorney series. I saw someone make some Smash montage back in the day, around 2010 I think, and I think it was like an Ike counter that someone just slapped objection onto, and I was curious and looked up where that was from, and eventually checked out the game. And I'm still trying to figure out why, but as soon as you start up in the courtroom lobby, I felt nostalgic. I've never been to court before as far as I know, so I don't know why that would be, but I remember being really into the game immediately, and I watched the whole first game, I watched the whole second one, and then I had to play the third for myself. My sis wanted some stuff in exchange for ordering the game online for me, and back then, you know, we only had DS cartridges, no multiple trilogy ports yet, and I did that stuff gladly, and she could clearly see I was already so passionate and wondered why. So to explain partly, I played some of the official orchestrated soundtrack, and she was instantly smitten with the orchestrated rendition of Objection. Eventually I'd buy every game in the series that I could, and I'd even organize efforts to get Phoenix into Marvel vs. Capcom 3. I have been into mysteries all my life. Apparently, I was obsessed with Blue's Clues and Scooby-Doo, so getting into this stuff has been a real natural progression. I love twists, the ones in Ace Attorney, and Ghost Trick 2. Much of the main Ace Attorney team worked on Ghost Trick also, and those twists are so purely stunning. I have watched, read, and played lots of mysteries, and solved many of them immediately, and I don't mean for that to sound as much of a brag as it does. I've played a lot of stuff where I don't solve it immediately and I'm just not satisfied. Anyway, my point is that Ace Attorney, I've had moments where I'm just playing it while on the treadmill, and then I realize they completely bamboozled me. I thought I was smart because I figured something out. I realized that was just a distraction, and they got this thing just right under my nose the whole time. But more important than that, this is the real big thing I think that I learned. Even more than the mysteries and twists that I love, I am forever impressed with how well Ace Attorney balances comedy and tragedy. Ace Attorney is the only one I've seen do this masterfully. I'll be laughing, like really admiring a little joke or charming character interaction, and then the music will go silent. The character will make a face they've never made before, and they'll change everything with their next sentence. There's a nice non-spoily example in Wendy Oldbag. Her name is joke on the term Wendy Oldbag because she's an old lady who rambles a lot, like me right now. She's played for jokes a lot, but after a rough day in court of pointing out her accidental lies, you'll meet up with her and show her something about the victim. She gets real and talks about how much she cares about them, and she may not say it, but you can feel that she appreciates your gesture. And then no jokes are being played. She'll give you a goodbye as she wants to go pay her respects one last time. And I think instantly in the series, I could feel that beyond cool twists and mysteries, these characters were written with so much heart. They feel real. They feel like the people who wrote them and who worked on the localization team translating what they're saying put their hearts in this, and the characters feel more natural than most other things I've messed around with. Like, Phoenix and Maya ironically use the catchphrase of a criminal they catch throughout the rest of the game as an inside joke. It's cute, it's funny, their entire found family best friend friendship is an absolute treasure. And not just them, Mia, Pearl, Edgeworth, Gumshoe, the Judge, just about everyone is one of the best characters I've had the pleasure of watching. I laugh for them, I cry for them, I really, really care for them. And the games give me this weird sense of like home. I made a big goofy video about some ideas I had for Ace Attorney getting into Smash about like 2.5 years ago. And I think he has a good shot of getting in as the final fighter actually, but even if he isn't, I'm glad to see all the sweet comments I still get praising how obvious my passion for this series is. I'll just keep having fun playing the old games, watching friends' reactions to the games, thinking of possible future cases, and so on. Anyway, hopefully it was fun to hear me blab on about how impressed I am with this series. It means a lot to me, and I hope it continues and gives many more people fun twists and the same homey feeling. And hopefully they can have fun chatting with me about their favorite cases and what theories they had and their favorite music tracks and anything else. Even in the worst case scenario where the series is just dead for whatever reason, the games we already have are amazing. It just always gets me crying, even as recently as today, in fact. So, whatever happens, I'm endlessly grateful and will always treasure that.
My favorite moment in a video game, it has to be in Minecraft when I'm sliding my diamond sword through the skull of my enemy, Jeremy. It feels so satisfying to knock him off a cliff and see his little corpse turn red and tip over like a cow. It is so satisfying to hear his screech as he dies, as his heart drops to 0, as his hunger bar depletes, and as he starves and screams, and then it just says it. He has died.
Is there a specific time you've killed me that you remember?
No, just every time feels the same. It's the same general feeling of pleasure that I get from my murderous intent toward you. It is so satisfying to kill you. Watch the life drain out of your little character's eyes in this game with pixels and blocks and other entities.
Holy shit.
Any other questions?
No, that was it.
It's more so a character than a moment. There is a moment that's really good, but Cloudstrife's characterization in the Final Fantasy VII Remake is amazing. It really, really captures, I think, what the devs were going for with the original, where a lot of people kind of perceive Cloud to just be like edgy, kind of no personality, like just try hard anime swordsman, because that's kind of what Advent Children went for. But the remake does a really good job of characterizing him as someone who is definitely still kind of a kid inside, trying to look cool and usually failing. He starts off incredibly serious and super closed off, but as the game progresses more and more, he kind of lets people in a little bit more, and he reluctantly goes along with like goofy things that people do. Like the scene that I'm thinking of in particular, there's a part where him and Aerith are just traveling by themselves through a collapsed tunnel, and she tries to high-five him, and it doesn't even register with him that like that's what she's trying to do. He like thinks of himself as like a loner, and he doesn't hang out with people more than he has to, and so he like totally just misses it, and she's like disappointed, and he thinks like, oh. And then another time, halfway through the tunnel, she tries to high-five him again after they figure something out, and he just kind of looks at her like, no, I'm not gonna do it. And she disappointedly puts her hand down, and then they get to the end of the tunnel, and she's like, yeah, we solved a puzzle. And at this point, she's like given up on him. He puts his hand up, and then she thinks like, like she realizes that he hasn't given up on, you know, friendship or whatever. And she tries to high-five him back, and he like quickly pulls his hand back and pretends like, oh no, I wasn't doing that. He's like super embarrassed about it. It's just really cool. They humanize him in a really good way. Or like, what's another instance of him trying too hard? In the first reactor when they're breaking in, and he's only just met Barrett. Barrett asks what does he ask? Something about like what rank he is, but he says it without mentioning the word rank. So he's like, so what number are you, or something, I don't know, something to that effect. And Cloud says, first. And he's like, I mean your age, not your goddamn rank. And Cloud's like, oh, that's mostly it. I just like his character development. He progresses. By the end, he very outwardly cares about his friends, and he's willing to fight for stuff. And he's also willing to be a little goofy. There's like a whole scene where they make him cross-dress that I think is handled really well, where he's like still not loving it, but he's like willing to do it to like help his team.
So recently I finished Spiritfarer, and there's a melody that kind of plays throughout the game in multiple different themes. You go through each experience and this melody is pretty consistent. There's this theme called just like At Sea, where that's like when you're on the boat and shit, and it's like got its own little thing, and then the melody will kick in at a certain point of the song, and that it's like a super like iconic melody that you'll hear in a bunch of different songs when you finally finish the game, and it's like super hard hitting. The melody comes back, but it's like a full-blown song with like lyrics and everything, and the lyrics just like reflect on what you just went through, and it's just like super tough but also really beautiful. The feeling of that when it finally comes back at the end after you go through all you just went through, and it's just like crazy, like a wave of emotions when it finally happens.
Does it like elevate the ending that much more then?
I think so, yeah, because like I saw some things about people saying like the ending wasn't amazing, whatever. Not really that, but like people just thought it was kind of okay, but the song itself like really hammered in what the ending is. I want people to play this fucking game. It's just such an experience from the first spirit that you find all the way to the last. It's like, it's really incredible and really beautiful. Art style's there, animations are there. Gameplay is a little on the slower side. If you don't really like farming games, it wouldn't be too exciting, but I personally don't really like farming games, and I really love this game. Soundtrack is really amazing, and it's just a really incredible feeling going through it.
One like the most emotionally impactful moments I think I've ever seen was the ending of Omori, which is that little game that's like a psychological horror thing that looks like a kid's game but then slowly devolves into a psychological horror like a lot of the really good RPG Maker games. The ending of that was basically like this really sort of, this is probably the wrong word, but like really sort of like metaphorical like representation of the main character being able to forgive himself for an accident he did when he was younger. Okay, so basically he accidentally killed his sister, so he freaked out because he had a lot of pressure put on him because they got him this really nice violin for his birthday when he was younger. They were gonna have a duet, and him and his sister had a bit of a fight, and he accidentally tripped her and she fell down the stairs and died immediately. One of his friends witnessed this immediately and helped him keep the secret. The friend had this idea to make it look like it was an accident, so they hung her from a tree. And throughout all, he's basically trying to deny his own wrongdoing and also trying to deny his friend, who's basically the only person who ever saw it. It's like these two are like bound by the secret. So like honestly, this kid just got totally fucked mentally. Like both those kids got fucked mentally by the circumstances. Like he's kept the secret his entire life, and he spiraled into depression because of it. He coped by dreaming of the white space, they called it, which is basically like this sort of childish representation of like this fantasy sort of world when he was younger, where he goes on little cute adventures with his friends, and his sister isn't dead, and they're searching for Basil, but subconsciously he's trying to, every time he gets close to finding Basil, which is the name of the friend, like he basically kills him, and because finding him would mean he remembers what he did. Eventually he's able to find Basil and remind himself what he did, and then like start on the path towards forgiving himself, thanks to one of his other friends coming and for the first time in a couple years basically asking to hang out. They'll all hang out and like have these meaningful like wholesome adventures for a while in real life, I mean, and then it culminates in them having a sleepover at Basil's house. And Sonny, he knows what the hell's happening because like he understands how Basil's been acting and why, and he's fucking positive and correct that he's about to kill himself in this room out of the guilt because it's getting to him. And then like both of them have these little shadow things that represent their guilt. There's supernatural stuff happening, but it is actually a metaphor and it is real. Like he goes into his room and he basically fights off Basil to make sure he doesn't kill himself. When Basil sees his main character, he tries to kill him to like, breathe them both from the guilt basically. When all's said and done, at the cost of his own eye, the main character saves Basil by convincing him, well, not convincing him, but more like just beating the shit out of him until they fall asleep and the rest of the friends get there to, you know, get them not dead. Like I think he does convince him like in a couple of senses, but really the fight's more like it actually happened, but it's more symbolic, I think. Yeah, and the main character, he at some point starts losing the fight because Basil has garden shears, and that's how he loses his eye, by the way. And then as it goes through it, like, when he's losing the fight, he like has this very long sort of psychedelic look through his own subconscious, whatever, where he realizes that people don't actually blame him for that, even if they were to know, and he has no reason not to forgive himself for what was obviously just a childish accident. And it's also like sort of implied that some people actually knew, like his mom and dad knew, and his dad didn't forgive him because like there's a scene where he's like what was obviously his dad, he's like chopping down the tree, and saying, I have no son. And his mom is like saying, I can't lose both children. So like they probably knew and covered it up. It's a real fuck situation. It's throughout all this, he's able to forgive himself and have it's like a spiritual duet with his sister, who played the piano. And that's like the ending part I mentioned earlier. Yeah, and then he wakes up in the hospital and basically goes to his friends and says, I have something to tell you. And that's the end of it. And that was like one of the first times I've cried in like a real long while.
Is that why it resonated with you? Because it just like got you emotionally?
Yeah, a bit, yeah.
My favorite moment from a video game, I would have to say that maybe not one particular moment, because that's kind of hard to pin down. I would have to say that it's sort of my entire experience with Grand Theft Auto Online. There has been a lot of just so many things to do in that sort of sandbox, as you would imagine in a Grand Theft Auto game. But probably the primary bit, and it's no surprise that in Grand Theft Auto Online, you play with people, and people I played with were very, very fun, and the sort of stuff that you would do in a Grand Theft Auto game, and it may not seem that sort of unique. It was an incredible experience, from trying to replicate glitches that you would find online to grinding the same mission over and over again. It was just amazing because it hit that sweet spot of like challenging things to do with goals that were attainable, and it was just blended so beautifully. It was really an awesome experience.
My favorite moment from a video game would have to be from Titanfall 2, when BT, the robot mech guy that you're inside of for most of the game, is brutally murdered in front of you. And it's one of my favorite because all throughout the game, you go in and out of the robot, and the robot has an AI, and you kind of feel like he's your companion, and he's like working through the game with you, kind of a thing. And it's really nicely done, and you feel a deep connection to the robot, to the AI. And then they go ahead and they murder him in front of you. And it made me feel sad. It made me feel a little upset that they would do it, and that's why it's one of my favorite moments in a video game, because that's one of those rare instances where a video game kind of like made me feel a strong emotion.
Are you glad they did it?
Well, you know, it was kind of a jerk move. I kind of felt like when I was seeing it happen, and like I was like going, oh God, why? Right? Like,
yeah.
Why would you have us build up a relationship and then destroy it? But, you know, they repaid it in the end, because you end up actually retrieving the AI module and putting the robot back together in the end. So it makes the game, like, I don't, kind of mean something. Because when you play a video game, right, you don't generally feel invested in, I don't know, collecting emeralds or you know, getting kill combos or the whatnot, like all of the arcadey kind of feeling things. Yeah. But you do get invested into a good story, and that's what that was.
Is there any reason you think you had like a personal attachment to the AI? Was it just like how much over time you like spent with them?
Yeah, it was literally because, you know, you play through most of the game before this happens, and you are relying on the AI to, you know, be able to combat effectively and navigate the terrain around you effectively. And they made a really decent AI. I won't say good, because like Lydia in Skyrim, right? Like no AI in a video game has ever been good per se for crafting purposes. But it was really fun to play with, the AI that they created, and the character they made was really fleshed out, and the robot really felt like it was almost like another person playing the game with you.
My favorite moment from a video game dates back to one of the first ones that I ever played, which is Earthbound. Wow, cool. So in Earthbound, there is this mechanic where you can save your game by calling your dad. The dad that you never ever see. You just know him through a telephone for the whole game, and that as a kid resonated with me so much, because when I was little, my dad would always work from the morning to like 11 at night, so the only way like I would talk to him was through the home phone, you know, and I would memorize his phone number. Like when I was really little, I would be like, oh my god, I know his phone number, and I would call him throughout the day, and I'd be like, oh my god, hi, and then occasion, because we had like a it was like really early 2000s, so we had a very old like monitor and like home computer, and I'd be like, can I like go on and like play some browser games? And they'd be like, yeah, go ahead. And you know, we'd just like talk and talk. So like that stuck with me, and like it really made me feel like, oh my god, this happens to other people. However, I did know my dad, and I did see him, unlike this, but you know, I don't know. It's really wholesome when you think about it.
The one I can think of at the top of my mind right now, like top of my mind that I can't stop thinking about, is probably Justice Rank 8 from Persona 5 The Royal. Basically, Justice is the arcana of your rival Akechi Goro, and throughout the whole game of Persona 5, at least up until early June, he's like your rival, and you always went up him in everything, and he always wants to continue challenging you, but he always insists on going easy on you. And he's a very busy person, he's a detective, but he is against what the Phantom Thieves believe. The player, being me, is like, okay, what the fuck is this guy on? In Persona 5, his social link is story made, and it doesn't really delve into his character a lot, but Persona 5 Royal makes his social link, it makes it so that you could progress along with it instead of it being like story bound, so you can actually like hang out with him whenever you want, except when days it lets you to. But from 1 through 8, it just goes in through your friendship and like how he never really has had friends, and how he never really had a rival besides, you know, you, the player, or Ren, and you just kind of see this friendship build. Things happen, you find out that he has the power to summon a persona, and he wants to challenge you in another rival game, except instead of it being pool or darts, he wants to go to the metaverse and straight up fucking fight you, and you have to beat him in order to go through the social link. Then he goes on a little rant about, you're like the one person I refuse to lose to. Then he just straight up says, he's like, you know, I'm gonna be honest, I hate you. Like, he just straight up says that he hates you. It's obvious that he doesn't hate him. Like, he really doesn't, because they're on the same team for at least a little bit until, you know, spoilers, he has different plans. But he throws his glove at you and says, you know, in the Old West, this is a sign of a duel, saying that I challenge you. And so you literally take his glove that he throws at you. It's so dramatic. It's so fucking funny. But Ren is like, all right, well, I guess I gotta take this glove as we're doing this. This is my rival. We gotta do this. And so then shit happens. They're kind of separated for a little bit. And then there's like an ending scene where Akechi goes somewhere, and Ren is like, he goes to talk to one of his friends at a bar. He's like, I wonder where Akechi went. And so you check in your freaking pocket, and the glove is still in there, and it's really sad. It's like, I still have a duty to do. It really just dwindles down to like, I was his real like only friend, and he was so much stronger than me, but because he didn't have friends, like how Joker has the Phantom Thieves, that was the one thing he lacked, and he could have done what he wanted to do. Because he didn't have friends, or he didn't believe in himself, he lost. During the whole rank 10 scene with all of the Phantom Thieves and Akechi, they kind of sympathize with Akechi, and Akechi finally kind of has his own change of heart and saves them because the enemies ambush them. And it's really nice and sweet, and at the end of the game, like the epilogue, it just kind of ties up the whole thing, and it leaves on a cliffhanger, and it's just really freaking amazing. And what Atlas did with the whole Justice Arcana is amazing, and they really made Akechi his own character instead of just kind of being like the ace detective who annoys the party. It actually seems like he's a character, and he's human, and it's awesome. Akechi is, oh my god, he's my favorite character. But like, he's still great in Persona 5, don't get me wrong, but Persona 5 Royal literally just branches it out so much more. I just wish they'd include him in more spin-offs like the dancing games, or hopefully in a future Persona 5 fighting game.
My favorite moment from a video game is when Cade 6 in Destiny 2 died, because he was my comfort character. I was emotionally attached to him, and when he died, I actually started crying. I bought the DLC and just binged it the entire day, and I like locked myself in my room. I was like, mother, brother, leave me alone. I must binge through this DLC before I lose focus on it. So I did just that, and then I started crying. It was horrible. I knew it was coming because there was too many spoilers, but I still cried. I miss Cade 6. He's my favorite and always will be my favorite video game character of all time.
Dang. Why is he your favorite, you think?
Because he's incredibly goofy, and he has really ass jokes, but they're really funny. And he has a pet chicken, and he radiates very calm energy and vibes.
Do you remember anything specific he said?
No. That's too specific. I don't think I can remember anything, but all good memories. And then he died, and then I hunted the son of a bitch who killed him, and then I killed the son of a bitch, and yeah, I felt better, but it didn't bring him back. So you know I'm still depressed. That.
Damn, I was gonna ask, like, what was, like, the side effect after that?
It was, I kind of just sat and stared at my screen. I was like, damn, this shit really hurted. Like,
yeah.
Damn. I had never been affected by a character like that before. And I was like, damn, how do I deal with this? Shit, this is an emotion I have never experienced. But yeah, that is my favorite cutscene.
Damn, you guys all thought it was over? You didn't think I was going to put my own answer in here? After interviewing so many people and editing for so long, of course I was going to think of my own answer. And after having so much time to think about it, it's come down to this one little moment in The Last Guardian where Trico sort of brings you back to life. In the context of the game, you two are saving each other pretty often, but there's this one little part in the later half of the game that really shows Trico's humanity. But before we go into that, let me set up the stage a little. In the beginning, you're sort of trapped in the bottom of this pit together. The two of you start out mostly just relying on each other's specialties to get through obstacles. There's not really much of a friendship yet, you're just sort of bearing through it together. And Trico is very stubborn in the beginning. He mostly does his own thing, and he really doesn't listen or even understand the boy at all. But the further you go on, the more like death-defying experiences you have together, and this reliance between the two of you creates a trust. And Trico starts to listen to you more, and he'll listen to certain commands you give him. And beyond that, a real bond starts to form between the two. And I think it culminates very nicely into this one small little moment. You both stumble into this room with some sort of alien-looking technology, and when it gets set off, it triggers something in Trico and he becomes hostile and straight up devours you. Oddly enough, this has happened a few times before, and usually the boy wakes up first with Trico lying on the ground. But this time, it seems that Trico wakes up first and the boy is lying unconscious. And here, Trico starts to show a little bit of concern after not seeing the boy wake up for a while. Trico picks him up and takes him outside the room, but still nothing. Trico starts getting a little more concerned and takes you out into the sunlight, and as a last-ditch effort, Trico dips you in the water nearby. And he's just so happy to see you okay. And this whole bit goes on for like an uncomfortable amount of time, and it just seems like you're not gonna wake up. What makes it special to me is that you're sort of seeing Trico genuinely care for you, even in like an unconscious state. It feels like the bond you two have grown to have is very real. It makes for a really good point of reference to see how much he's really changed since the beginning. And there are many moments like this. Honestly, I could have picked the end of the game. That's a pretty good example of all this. But I feel like this moment's really good because it's sort of just this quiet, drawn out moment where you're seeing Trico act on his own. It feels like when you finally wake up, he's actually happy to see you alive and alright. Despite the lack of any dialogue or real communication, I feel as if these small, understated moments make Trico feel like a true companion to the player. And I really haven't played a game that has made me care for characters in this sort of way before. And this moment made me realize that the actions of a character are stronger than any overly emotional monologue could ever give. And that's why I just love it to death and back. It shows real humanity between characters that I haven't seen in anything else. And it's why I'll always cherish this little moment.